right, this week we get to do pigeons. Woo! These are lovely. Actually, we're doing extant dinosaurs, guys. So I know that sounds kind of funny, but a lot of the things that were present in late dinosaurs are characteristics that carried on to modern day birds. So, if we were to spend some time talking about dinosaur evolution, we would talk about the Theraspids, we would talk about the Ovicids, and these are groups that then give rise to modern day mammals and birds. All right, so we're going to start by examining the external anatomy. So we're going to start by pointing out the beak. There's our beak. The external nares, these are the nostrils, which are right there on the sides of the beak. So we're starting to see some nostril anatomy that's similar to kind of like how our noses are organized. The eyes. Each eye has both a lower and an upper eyelid. Beneath these is what's called the nictitating membrane, or the third eyelid. This membrane is used to brush tears across the eyeballs. So diving birds have clear nictitating membranes that are kind of contact lenses that extend all the way across the eye. This helps them then to have clear vision while they're underwater. For birds, and then for us as well, the nictitating membrane is what we see as kind of like our tear duct. So down in the corner of your eye. On dogs, it's a little more pronounced than it is on humans, but it comes out of this kind of amphibian and reptilian heritage that we all have. All right, birds have ears. These are external openings that are posterior to the eyes. These ears are covered by feathers that are called coverts. Okay, so with the feathers on, they're kind of hard to notice. Different birds have different adaptations having to do with the sizes of their ears. So for example, owls they have ear pinnae, the raised parts, the external parts that we see, and the owls are also able to independently rotate each of their ears so that they can get a really good kind of idea of where in fact their prey items are. The feet, if you look at the skin on the feet, there's a total absence of feathers on the feet. Also look at the pigeon's toes. We see basically claws that are there as part of the toes. Okay, so if we place our pigeon ventral side up and we spread out one of the wings, Ava, if you'll hold that wing out, we can see different types of feathers. Okay, so we have our primary feathers. These are the flight feathers. Okay, so the primary feathers are attached to the bones of the finger and wrist, because essentially this is this is the wrist and the hand of a pigeon. Okay, so these primary feathers are also called the flight feathers. We also have these shorter secondary feathers right here. These are actually attached to the ulna, or the forearm bone. We've even got smaller right here, scapular feathers. These are kind of like the shoulder feathers, basically. And so these are all of these are flight feathers that are covered by these coverets. Okay. We also have ulula feathers, which are kind of like the slots on the leading edge of airplane wings. These allow birds to kind of slow down their flight. So if we were in the lab, I would have you take out one of these primary feathers and examine it both under the microscope and with your naked eye. One thing that is true of feathers is they have a long, slender, hollow shaft with barbs that extend out at an angle of about 45 degrees. You can pull apart the barbs, but the barbs help keep the feather kind of filaments connected to one another so that it's a uniform surface. So you've seen how Ava has kind of spread those barbs apart. Having each feather as a uniform surface is really, really, really important to allow for kind of the air resistance that enables flight. Now we're going to look at the oral cavity. Okay, pigeons have tongues. The tongue is used to help manipulate the food, similar to how we use our tongues. Their tongues are narrow and sharply pointed. We also have what are called palatine folds. These are fleshy folds that extend from the lateral borders of the upper jaw to the midline. And what this does is kind of allows for the passage of the air from the nostrils to the glottis. We have a pharynx, which would be farther down into the throat. We have the glottis, which is the opening to the larynx. And it's a slit-like opening on a raised area just posterior to the tongue. It's really hard to get in so close. And then if we were to poke further back, we would also have the esophagus. So just like we have adaptations in our throats that allow for us to breathe and eat through the same oral opening, so too do birds have similar sorts of adaptations. All right, so there are a few things we want to point out before we get too far actually into the bird. First of all, we've taken the skin away, but we were careful here not to cut through the bones. This right here, this is called the keel. This is similar to our sternum, our breastbone, but birds or extant dinosaurs, right, have a much larger bony ridge here, a much larger keel, because this is where all of their flight muscles attach. So we're looking here at this muscle. This is your pectoralis muscle. We also have pectoralis muscles, okay? These are the chest muscles. So if you've ever watched like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, there was some movie where somebody threw I think it was Journey to the Center of the Earth or something like that, where someone threw a berry at him and he used his pecs to pop that berry right off and bounce back, right? Pecs are your chest muscles. These are what attach to your sternum or your breastbone. Immediately under, okay, so what this action of the pectoralis muscle is the downward stroke of the wing. So when it contracts, it pulls that wing downward. When it relaxes, the wings float back up. Below the pectoralis muscle is the supracoracoideus muscle. It also has its origin point on the keel. It is used for the upward stroke of the wing. We also, if we were to take all the skin off all the way through the wings themselves, we would see the biceps and the triceps, just like we have bicep and tricep muscles. The biceps flex and rotate the forewing. The triceps extend the forewing. So when the wing is going out like this, that is the action of the triceps. When it's coming in and tucking under, that is the action of the biceps. All right, so we've taken the muscles off, these pectoral muscles and such off, and we've cut through the sternum to start opening up our pigeon. So we've removed basically the sternum and the rib cage, but we're going to focus here in the throat first, okay? So this very tough structure right here is the trachea. Okay, here's a little tidbit, all right? Bird tracheas are reinforced, so I want you to look. I'm not crushing its trachea. You can almost do nothing to actually strangle a bird through crushing its trachea. They have rings around it that lend to their structural stability. So it's very, very hard to actually collapse a bird's trachea. Okay, if you ever have the chance, because like a bird has flown in your house or something, and you need to hand catch a bird to get it out. We had a house that we used to get hummingbirds inside all the time, and we would have to hand catch them to get them back out because it had a wall of glass windows along the back wall. Anyway, if you're going to catch a bird, you're going to hold it by its neck. You're basically going to put the bird, this is going to look horrible because this bird is open, but you're going to catch the bird and hold its body in the palm of your hand, and you are going to squeeze really, really, really hard on its neck. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to keep that bird and hold on to it. It will be able to work its way out of your grip. You can't crush this, all right? The trachea is an incredibly durable structure in birds. We have two other structures. I've taken out part of this trachea. Now you can really look at it really well and see, not with my gloves because my gloves are too big, but Ava's going to pull that piece back. You can see like that bony structure that preserves the trachea. So the pink on the outside is the muscle, but then touch that bony structure inside. All right, this is why you cannot collapse birds' tracheas. All right, so next to the trachea, we have another tube here. This is the esophagus. Okay, this is where food goes. But interestingly, next to it, we have what's called the crop. So if you've ever dealt with cows, cows have a multi-chambered stomach, okay? Birds, some do have the ability to like, what a lot of birds have is something called a crop or a gizzard, all right? And what this is a pouch that they actually swallow rocks in. And so the seed goes to the crop to have the husks broken off of it before it ever gets swallowed down the esophagus. So we see this particularly among seed-eating birds, that they have this pouch that they put rocks in to be able to kind of break off the husks of seeds. It's less pronounced in birds that are actually like insect eating and like kind of small mammal eating. You won't see the same. Well, you still see a crop. It's just not serving kind of the same function. Okay, so this pouch that often has rocks and seeds in it is the crop. So looking at Eric's pigeon, you really get to see the function of the crop here. So if you look inside, all of this are the seeds that were part of this pigeon's last meal. So they are here in its crop, getting the husks broken off of them before it's ever going to be swallowed down the esophagus. So we're going to start with the abdominal cavity, looking here at its heart. So birds have incredibly large and elaborated hearts. Bird hearts are 4-chambered, just like our own. So we'll cut into it. Ava, if you want to work with a scalpel and go from the bottom to the top of it, the scalpel's right here. You'll see that we have a left and right atrium and a left and right ventricle. So cutting through from this lower lip to the anterior end, we should be able to separate the heart into a dorsal and a ventral segment, and we should be able to look inside and see these 4 chambers. Let's see what Ava's able to find here. Do I need to cut deeper? Yeah, a little bit deeper. That's good. That should be deep enough. Now pull it apart. We'll see if we can see our various chambers. You're getting in the way there.
Sorry, I need to switch tools to this.
Yeah. All right, so looking inside the heart, you can see, let me get the poker. Here is one of the atria. Here's the other atria is going to be over on this side. The ventricles are the lower segments of the heart. And so you can see here that we've got both this left and right chamber. We also, of course, have the pink stuff. The pink stuff is the vasculature, because these birds have been dyed just like the frogs were. All right, so just to review, it's perhaps not easy to see, but you can see here that there's a chamber at the top and a chamber at the bottom. These are the left atrium on the top and the left ventricle on the bottom. We've got this main artery here that you can see right above my thumb. That's going to be the aorta. We also, as we cut out of the pigeon, we severed through the main vein that comes from the lung.
Come on.
All right, so again, Eric gets a phenomenal bird because, you know, he already had a phenomenal frog. Eric's bird was super heavily musculatized. None of those are right. Was super muscular. So we kind of had to manhandle it to get into the chest cavity. But one thing that's beautiful about Eric's bird is that the dye really got isolated well with the heart. So you can see here that the heart is bright red. You can see the blue of the veins there. So just, again, a beautiful specimen of a dyed heart for Eric. As we look farther down in the abdominal cavity, just like with our frogs, one of the big organs that we're going to see on the top is the liver. So here we have the pigeon's liver. It is 2 lobes. This is one of the lobes. This is the other. All right, so now we're getting into the digestive organs. And we had the esophagus and the crop as the top part of the digestive system. Here we've got the stomach. You see the beautiful vasculature surrounding it. Below that, we have this kind of peritoneal sac that has the intestines in it. So the liver provided bile, which is helpful for digestion. Birds also have a gallbladder. The gallbladder is surrounded by the liver. It stores and sends bile to the intestines. We've got the gizzard, which is the posterior portion of the stomach, where seeds and grains are also ground up. That makes this really, really kind of hard. Okay. We have the intestines. If you can kind of break into the mesentery there, Ava. See if we can see the individual kind of parts of the intestines here. All right, so we've got these long tubes, the smaller ones being the small intestine, and it gets thicker down there where it grows into the large intestine. So let's see if we can really get a good image here. Okay, so the thicker part, obviously, being the large intestine. The intestines are where most of the digestion happens, where most of the nutrients are absorbed. We also have these two small blind pouches right here at the kind of base of the intestines that are called the cecae. These as you approach the terminal end, there's some bacterial decomposition that happens in the ceca. So for anything that is living predominantly on plants, and birds qualify when they're seed eaters like pigeons, then we're talking about having some area of the gut where bacteria live and are able to help ferment those plant foods. And yeah, so that brings us to the end of our digestive tract. Again, here looking at the gizzard, you can actually see we've cut the gizzard open and you can see the rocks that are inside. So this purpose of this hard gizzard is to be able to help grind up those seeds. So some of it being rock solid is because it's muscular, but some of it's really truly because it's filled with rocks. Just interestingly, chicken gizzards can be viewed as a delicacy sometimes. My dad used to eat them. They smelled so foul. He microwaved them and they blew up in the microwave. So I don't have fond memories of eating chicken gizzards, but they are something that in domesticated poultry that some people like to eat. All right, so it was really hard to isolate the lungs here on this specimen. You can see where I've made a cut right there. That actually ended up cutting through the lungs. So the lungs are really kind of almost attached to the ribs themselves, or at least towards the back, and have a variety of different little air sacs that can kind of independently inflate. All right, so looking here, you can get a better view of the lungs. They were right there, kind of up against the outside of the rib cage. So these lungs have tiny air sacs all around the outsides of them. You can kind of see these little bumps. And so those are the part that really actually inflate with air. So of course there was enough room in this chest cavity for those lungs to inflate pretty large. So here we've taken this lung out, and you can really see these individual air sacs that make up the structure of the lung. So each of these can inflate as the lungs fill with oxygen. All right, so looking behind all of our digestive organs, we've got our kidneys located on either side of the spine there. And then we have this berry-like structure that represents the ovaries. So if this were a male pigeon, we would have two kind of bean-like structures that were the testes. But instead, on the left side of this particular bird, we end up with this ovary that each one of these little kind of protrusions represents an egg that could develop. So most females will lay only like 3 or 4 eggs during a given reproductive cycle. For birds, just like amphibians and reptiles, we have a single opening, a single urogenital opening, the cloaca, that the digestive system, the excretory system with the kidneys and bladder, and the reproductive system all open into. All right, so looking at Eric's bird, just to rehash the digestive system, Eric's bird has a really nice really nice esophagus that was evident there. Okay, the esophagus opens up into this. This is the stomach. Okay, the stomach is more tubular, and then of course at the base of the stomach we have our rock solid gizzard. The gizzard is what's filled with rocks and helps aid in digestion. Eric's pigeon is definitely a male. Okay, all this yellow stuff, that's just basically poop. But what we have here, Ava, if you'll point out the kidneys first, these are the kidneys on Eric's pigeon, and right kind of above the kidneys are the testes. So these most clearly a male, while the other specimen that we had was female. The sperm would come out of the cloaca just as would the female's eggs or the poo or the urine.